Welcome to the newsroom. Breaking news coming in this hour. The U.S. Supreme Court is hearing arguments over the legality of U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, which he imposed using the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, this particular case tests the limit of presidential authority, as lower courts ruled that Trump exceeded his powers by applying a law meant for national emergencies to broad trade measures. Now, this challenge comes from businesses and 12 states, mostly Democratic-led, arguing that the tariffs could have trillions in economic impact. Now, during the hearing itself, U.S. Solicitor General D. John Sawyer has defended Trump's actions, arguing that the tariffs have strengthened U.S. negotiating power and have prevented economic retaliation from foreign countries. Conservative and liberal justices presented Sawyer on whether IEEPA truly grants the president authority to impose tariffs, with questions about whether Congress had explicitly authorized such sweeping economic measures. The case also invokes the Supreme Court's major questions doctrine, which requires clear congressional authorization for executive actions of vast economic or potential significance in the political arena as well. Now, joining us on this discussion is my colleague Maresha Barve. Maresha, what more can you tell our viewers with regards to this particular case? Of course, there are questions being posed on whether what Trump is doing is an overreach, because at the crux, tariffs come under the purview of the U.S. Congress. So how can we expect this to pan out? We do know that the U.S. Supreme Court currently has a conservative-leaning majority.
Well, yes, Pia, like you have very rightly mentioned, I would first like to answer your question by giving you a rather dive into a little background into what the tariffs hold. Now, Donald Trump's tariff policy in his current second term involves the baseline of 10% tariffs on almost all imports and significantly a higher reciprocal or punitive tariffs on specific countries or products, which have obviously led to an escalation in global trade wars. Now, like you have mentioned, there have been a lot of judicial and legal challenges that this decision by Donald Trump has faced. To give you a little bit more insight, the Trump administration has justified these tariffs under national security claims and the International Emergency Economic Power Act, which is, like you mentioned, the IEEPA Act, all right, which allows the president to regulate commerce during national emergency. Now, the administration argues that the goal is to protect domestic manufacturing within the U.S. itself, reduce trade deficits within the nation, and generate revenue to replace income taxes. Now, however, federal courts have consistently ruled that the IEEPA-based tariffs are an illegal overreach of presidential authority, as the law was not intended to impose broader tariffs. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court began its hearing and the arguments of it in this month, in the November of 2025, and this ruling could have massive implications, potentially requiring a refund which is estimated to almost $750 billion to $1 trillion in collected duties. Well, it has also, just like it has had legal implications, we cannot overlook the economic implications, of course, of these tariffs. The tariffs have led a significant disruption in global supply chains and economic uncertainty. The policies have actually contributed to a downgrade of global GDP because of instability, and have prompted trading partners like India in itself to diversify their export. India being, like I mentioned, one of the countries. There have been multiple other countries that have also been hit by this, which, for example, is Brazil, with 50% of tariff that has been hit on almost all goods. China is a complex nation in itself, where generally around 30% after a recent de-escalation has happened in talks with Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. with a 10% tariff on which is also recently claimed as the fentanyl tariff, reducing, announced in October. So,
Yes.
considering its legal and economic implications and the worldwide global trade war that has been going on, these are the implications, Pia, of Trump's tariff.
Indeed, and what remains to be seen is how exactly will the Supreme Court vote on it, because what they do and their decision will, of course, set a precedent. If they vote in favor of Donald Trump, that will set a precedent onto how far-reaching a U.S. president's actions can be, whether that can, sort of overrule what the Congress can do or not. And on the other, if they do not accept Trump's tariffs, of course, all of the tariffs that he has imposed, as Marisha has put it, they become null and void. And of course, Trump will have to look to other means. Stay on with us as we track further details. We're now learning